Shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. I wanted to share with you, continuing the thought of what is anti-Semitism in light of our freedoms of expression, or freedom of expression. Obviously, these two ideas have clashed, or can be demonstrable that is clashing in our society, because obviously there is an intent to silence the voice and expression of those that we may be in opposition to. And so let me try to make this point a little bit clearer. You see, we have a right to our freedoms of expression, but many are arguing now that our freedom of expression is limited as long as we don't say something that may be hateful, or that a person's ideology or ideas are hateful. So they are limiting our ability to express our freedoms. There are things that we don't agree with. One of the basic ideas we need to take a look at is that we need to learn to love, to hate what's evil. Yeah, I said that right. Love to hate what's evil, what's wrong. And there are some ideas that is completely wrong in any basis of ideas. But the fact that that person has the freedom to express it only reveals what is in their mind and heart. The question we have to ask ourselves, is it better to know what the other person is thinking or feeling towards another group of person, or just bottle it up all inside? And so we see a movement both within political parties to try to limit what we say and declare it hate speech. Once they do that, they declare what you're saying is illegal to say. This is where I believe Kanye West got himself into a whole bunch of trouble, into a lot of problems, because he tried to express himself what he felt was his point of view, and obviously directed to the Jewish community. Some of which you may argue is proper, others would say no, it's not proper. The American Jewish Community, if you go with it, it's really a liberal, leftist, progressive organization headed by a gentleman named Deutsch, who was the congressperson. This year, thank God, he's not going to be running. And he is now the head of this department of anti-Semitism. In his website, or on their website, they have a whole list of different statements and declarations that they consider to be anti-Semitic. Heck, some of the things I've said may be considered anti-Semitic by his definition. And so we have to be very careful in defining what is anti-Semitic, or what words can be considered or indicated as anti-Semitic, because we can analyze the words of our prophets and we could come out with the notion that they were all anti-Semites, and these were all Jews from different tribes. So I scratched my head and I asked myself, what Kanye started and the reaction of what people did is a demonstration that, in fact, our freedoms of expression and of thought is being limited. Just think about what he did. He said something that was completely crossing the line of what is considered acceptable within the communication world. In other words, it was considered hate speech. And what did they do? Well, take a look at what they did. They basically, those on the left side of the Jewish community, automatically started to attack him and saying this is anti-Semitic, this is hateful speech. Even I was surprised to see Shapiro say the same thing. And I'm saying, what's going on here? So I looked into it. And in fact, he really didn't say anything new. It's basically what he was able to perceive they were doing to him being the victim. So he responded back. As a victim, he responded how he felt. And this was not perceived as that way. It was perceived as, well, this guy has a lot of followings, and he could cause a lot of damage to the Jewish community for what he said, and so forth. But had it stopped there, had it stopped right there and say, okay, this guy's an anti-Semite. But no, it went further. It went to the point of an action of closing his account. his bank account, his ability to be able to sustain himself. And then a whole bunch of others began to basically knock him out. And I say by knock him out is to make his life miserable and to such a point that he wasn't able to speak anymore. I find that morally reprehensible. If you want to know if someone's a Hitler type, let him speak, let him manifest who he is. That way you know who he is. And here I find it completely ironic that the very same people he was criticizing are the same people that are basically censoring him. Yes, he got kicked out of Twitter. Yes, he got kicked out and had his account closed. And to the point, because he was connected somewhat with Trump, even Trump and him were now labeled anti-Semites. And I said something that was fascinating online. I asked the group page here, now what did Trump say that was so anti-Semitic? As a matter of fact, as a result of that, even this other billionaire canceled him out. And you see that he's been canceled out everywhere. Why? Because of what he said. What did he say? Jews need to get their act straight, get their act right. You know, I put a post, and I just changed Trump, and I put God. Because God has said the same thing to the Jewish people. You got to get your act right. You've got to straighten up. You've got to stop denying me. You got to stop going against my laws. You've got to stop acting as pagans. And so when you have individuals like Kanye West realizing that these Jews are basically behaving like aretz, like complete behemoths. If you know what a behemoth is, an animal, and they're doing harm to society, then you wonder, maybe God is really saying something to us Jews. Maybe God is telling us, stop your shtick. Stop harming other individuals, because I will cause harm back to you. And this is what the prophets have said over and over and over again. Interesting, I was reading today in the book of Amos. You know, the prophet Amos, he was a businessman. He was a very prosperous cattle herder. He was into the cattle and agriculture. That was his business. And so he got word from one of the priests of Bethel. You know, he was high, Cohen. He was worshiping something different than what it was the God of Israel. But nevertheless, he came and went to the authorities, told Jeroboam, you know, you have a guy over here causing trouble. He has a conspiracy to take you out. He wants to take you out. He wants to kill you. And he's speaking words against you. What are those words? Well, these are words that's coming from he says it's from God. These are prophetic words that he's saying from God. You know, we need to address him. So he went, Amasai, he was the Cohen of Bethel. He went to the prophet Amos and says, you know what you're saying? You stop prophesying. Stop preaching to Israel regarding it. I want you to stop it. Stop it. Do you think he listened to what he had to say? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, he added something. He said to them, chapter 7. If you read the last verse 17, he says something fascinating. He said, you know what, Amos? I want you to stop it. The king is aware of it, that you want to remove him from power. And he came back. Amos responded back. I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Cohen, Mr. Priest of Bethel, you that are worshiping God completely incorrectly. I want to tell you something. God says the following. God says that he's going to turn your wife into a prostitute. She's going to be prostituting. And on top of that, your daughters and your sons will be killed and slaughtered in the street. And you will die at the hands of God in an invasion that will take place, because Israel will be taking exile. Oh, he got so upset. You better prophesy somewhere else, because you're not here in Israel. Go prophesy in the tribe of Yehuda. And as a result, we read the complete position that he was basically declared an anti-Semite, a Jew hater. By who? By the Cohen, by the religious structure of that time that was completely paganized. They didn't believe in God. They believed in their own God, their made up God, and their servicing idols. And it was there that we find out what was in the heart of that Cohen, of that priest that was basically doing the job of the king, political maneuvering. And this reminds me a lot of what's going on in the Jewish world. In the Jewish world, you have different strides. You have those who are religious, who believe in one God, and you have those who don't. You have a great number, I would say about 85% of our tribesmen, they don't believe in God. They don't hold up to the ideals of Torah values. They completely are constantly looking to change the law of the land and make it perverted. As a matter of fact, the ones that basically made it happen, made all of these new laws in the United States, was in conjunction with the liberal establishments of Jews. Yes, my friends, Jews are at fault. My friends, we cannot escape this reality. Kanye West basically pointed the finger and said, you guys are only interested in money and not in the people. He made a point that we should, even though he spoke all of this nonsense, we need to listen to what basically is the essence of the message, which is, I don't agree with Kanye West. I don't believe in what he said, not one iota. But the message that's filtered down that we need to listen to is, we have taken this country and we have perverted this country in creating laws. The Schumer, the Schiff, the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Deutsch that created laws in this land that basically undermines the family structure, undermines the Torah value structure. Now in New York, you have havoc in religious Jewish institutions because they've taken money as bribes from the government. In order, now the government is telling them, you have to now do what we say because we gave you money. We gave you money, hush money. And because they're now bribed, their conscience and their morality has been basically compromised. And we don't like to hear that. We don't like to hear that the Jews have been compromised with their values. They have embraced a religion that's not their religion. They've embraced secularism. They've embraced the ideology of a leftist, progressive, socialist mindset that God has no place in the schoolroom. And yet the Lubavitcher Rebbe and others great rabbis had advocated and advocate for God back into the schoolroom. The very moment they did this, they took out God not only from the public arena, they took out God from the private arena, from the very religious institutions that they belong to, that they become so secular. Don't talk to me about God in public. Don't say a prayer in Congress. No. You'll find no Jewish leaders raising a prayer. Why? Because they're absent. They're vacant of God. They're vacant of who they're supposed to be, Jews. And they've become to the same level of the Jeroboams of our society. Even worse, they've basically perverted the non-Jew and the idea of God in them to such a state that they want to enslave you to the mindset of a human being and create a man-made religion called secularism. That's called the liberal progressive ideology, where you keep God out and you no longer can speak your right to freedom, your right to speech. This is why I encourage these Republicans who have joined in with the mesh of these Democrats that basically have gone against God. And let me say it very clearly, there is a spiritual war going. That spiritual war is against not physicality as much as spiritual principles. And they violated every single principle, both in the Judeo-Christian ethics, and they need to get back to God. We need to get rid of these individuals that are supposedly representing our constituency. In other words, our belief in government. Government cannot exist without the ideal that we are under one God, that we believe in one God. The very moment you do remove God from the public arena, from the government arena, you basically are guaranteeing the destruction of this country. And this is what I think that President Trump meant, that you Jews need to get your act straight. You no longer believe in God. I don't know what you believe in, but you don't believe in God. And Kanye West came right straight to the point. The Jews believe in money. The Jews believe their God is money, and they utilize it, and they utilize their influence to create and basically attack the very fibers, the very fabric of society, which is family. I mean, the whole entire black community is destroyed because they destroyed by laws and impositions of laws the very fabric of what made the black family strong. A mother and a father and child, and instead they basically siphoned them with all types of help to keep them separated from their father. This same thing is happening in different ethnic communities. The Latin community is suffering the same problems. Don't you think for one iota that that's not the case? And we're now getting the feedback or the result of that even in the Jewish community. And the secular Jewish communities is seeing the effects of divorce on such a high level as never before. Why? Because their idea is to destroy family values. No, I don't mean the new family values, where basically it talks about multiple genders. No, I'm talking about the true biblical genders. A male, female, father and a mother creating a home. That cell of the family structure has been destroyed from the very beginning by the Democratic Party, the Democratic Liberal Party of Obama, of the Clintons, of current Biden administration. When you remove that very basic idea and legalize it and recognize it as unique, you destroy the whole entire fabric and structure of society in today's world. We need to get back to God, but we need to get back to God's value, not religious or individual persons' ideologies, back to God. And I emphasize this because even in our Jewish community, we have people walking around spouting out nice secular positive ideologies that only destroys the very fabric of what made the Jewish people the Jewish people. That's the Torah. That's the law. What you can and cannot do. What you're not supposed to do. And when we leave that and we basically ignore God, God will have something for us, and it's not positive at all. And we read that in the books of the prophets. And then you'll cry unto me, and I will not hear you. I will let you undone to your own disastrous, vile decisions. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero. Yes, anti-Semitism is when we hate God and we hate our fellow man. That's anti-Semitism. Because anti-Semitism has to do with anti-humanity. And anti-humanity is what's going on even in the political and religious circle, and secular circle in particular. Shalom, shalom.